again at 5:31. And we've got everybody. Sonia's here, Guy's here, I'm here, Josh is here, Brenda's here, Andrea's here. Okay. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
Hey, Alice.
Yes.
So the other day you made a plea at the end of our meeting about people filling out the census.
Yes.
Is it in our interest and our best interest to do a little communication about that to make sure people have filled out the census?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So maybe we should just add it to the agenda and talk about it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Under new business?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I actually sent Josh. Did you get I forwarded something new from Senator Leahy?
Yep, the one from today. Yep, I saw that.
Yeah. All righty, so we'll add 5.6 to the agenda as a census information. Right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? I guess hearing none, we'll move forward to the approval of minutes. Did everybody have an opportunity to read the minutes? Any questions, concerns, additions, corrections? All right, hearing none, we can just approve them by consensus since it's such a small group. And then move forward to new business, which is the first number 5.1 is logo and branding.
Yeah, I still think that this is kind of like blended with the mission, vision, strategic a little bit, or strategic plan. But as far as logo and branding goes, as far as new stuff, I have been working with Jess Van Orman, who's one of the virtual learning coordinators recently, developing a logo / like color scheme and branding for Berry Virtual Academy, just because right now they really just have a name. So she's running by the draft stuff I gave her by her team right now, and they're going to get back to me. So, and to go along with that, we're going to build them like the same social media that the rest of our schools have, so that way families and stuff can follow along and whatnot. So Jess is going to be kind of in charge of like updating parents through that. So she's excited about that.
And that won't be a separate, for example, a separate web page. Won't that be like a subset of the Berry schools page?
Yeah, it would be a subset. Jess Van Orman and Lorraine Morris have already built their own website for the Berry Virtual Academy, like where all the resources are for those kids. And I don't know exactly the details, but I know they're going to keep pushing them to that location because they're the two that are keeping it updated, as well as the individual teachers. But yeah, so this would just be basically social media to go along with that. I don't know exactly what Jess's plans are. It's probably going to be a lot of Google Meet screenshots or something. I don't know. But kind of just talking about projects that kids are working on through virtual learning. So we're going to try to at least make that presentable, because right now it's literally just a name.
Yeah. And that's fully understandable. The only thing that I would just be concerned about was not to have a freestanding web page, that it should be part of the Berry schools. However, those are all connected.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be scattered all over the internet.
No. Right now, the Berry Virtual Academy, the link to their website under the district is actually listed as almost like a fifth school. Like it's under the schools tab, so it's with the rest of the schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So that's
so Alice, just a quick question. Actually, to Brenda and her Academy Award-winning video people. I noticed the shark with sharp teeth was prominently displayed. Is the shark going to be our mascot, or we talked about that, or is it going to be our mascot for this year, or she? I don't know if it's a he or she. Uh,
We're going with gender neutral on Finn. Finn
Yeah.
is our shark's name, and the shark is our mascot and has been. Apparently, and Guy, you probably know this more than I do. The history is there used to be an elephant as a mascot at some point in time, decades ago. I don't know when it got changed. I've been at Spalding since 2003. It's been a shark.
I don't remember the elephant. I remember the shark off and on. So just asking the question, because that's really really part of the identity at the end of the day. It's like, and they are moving north, so maybe it's a good mascot. I don't know.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing would be consistency. So if it's a shark, keep it a shark. And if we have any questions about that, we need to think about it across the board at school. But whatever we're doing, be consistent.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want really bad as like a final product for the mission, vision, strategic plan is after that's done, having like a concrete brand for each school, because it's not there at the moment.
So just a suggestion in terms of the agenda, that might be a tag along later in the agenda as opposed to first in the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to, I know Sonia has been really our leader in this mission vision statement thing, but that would be my suggestion, that maybe we put that a little less prominent in our agenda. How's that?
Yeah.
Unless
we're just not
ready
ready
to
to address it at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. One other thing too that I'll add, at least to logo and branding, is I believe he emailed, I forget, I think it was David, Alice, and Guy, Michael Pope. He emailed, or maybe it was Sonia too, I forget. He emailed with interest to be part of the mission vision strategic team.
Yeah.
But regarding logo and branding, he forwarded me something that he made back in 2017 as a new logo, a new rebranding for Barry Town School, because that's where he's a teacher. And I was like blown away by it. Like, he did an awesome job. It was super modern and like minimal. I'm not prepared to share it at the moment, but I definitely, like, just from seeing that, like, I feel like we could really use his skill set once we get to that point where we're actually developing things. He seems to have a real knack for that stuff. So I would just recommend that.
So Josh, I'll just add on that. His brother is also worldwide involved in, big time stuff. So not only does he have a skill set, but he also has a potential skill set for sponsorships and all those kinds of things.
Yep.
His brother is, I hate to say this, super connected.
Yep. Nice.
If you can live in San Francisco, you can live anywhere.
Yeah. True. Yeah. So I would recommend, once we reach that point of forming a team or getting to the point where we're starting to produce some branding stuff, we should get his opinion.
And actually, the other thing I would add is, and I didn't ask Michael this, but he may have some cohorts that may be willing to help, that would fit into our, into the box of what we're trying to do in terms of vision, mission. I mean, he may know somebody in the area that we're not thinking of, and I would certainly ask him that. But he's extremely talented, so. Trust me, he does not have to teach at Barrytown. He could be doing a ton of other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that having been said, I guess that rolls us into the mission, vision, strategic plan piece. And what my consideration was, as we talked about this, is that we do need to cast our nets wider. We have a traditional group of people in the communities that are involved with committees and programs and activities, but it might be better to get the information out there and see who else might be out there, just as this Michael Pope person came to us as we do our information dissemination. There may be other folks out there who would be interested that maybe have never been asked before. And one way to get people involved is to ask, but they have to know what they're getting involved with before they could be asked to do that, to do anything. So in communicating with Winton, I kind of suggested a September type information, what is planning, October, how this applies to the school, November, what our intent is, how we're going to go forward, and then December, active recruitment of people to get people on board for a January start, if that's what we're looking at. And so one of the thoughts I had was, for a number of years now, I've done a radio program on the Goddard radio station that concerns itself with education. And I would be willing to work with Winton in that same fashion to prepare a podcast that we could put out there. And basically what it amounts to is having almost like an interviewer and let Winton answer the questions. But people could listen to it at their leisure and find out just what exactly a strategic plan is and why it's necessary to have it. And particularly at this time where we are merged schools, that it was quite possible that each individual school had some kind of a plan, but now we have to have a plan for our entire merged district. So that was the plan as we move ahead, to get people from all the communities and all the businesses involved in what our school is trying to achieve, our school district is trying to achieve.
So Alice, this is Guy again.
Sure.
A couple of people I would like to add to the list, not necessarily as just for consideration. One is Steve Pappas, who was the editor of Times Argus. I didn't think of him until recently, but he's got a far reaching range in terms of Barry, / Rutland. He's also done some stuff at Spalding, I believe. He's a deep thinker. The other person I thought of was the director of Capstone. Now, she lives in Waterbury, but she also has, I think, a real interest in the area, and this is one of the areas that she is always. I mean, Sue is always, trying to help the area. I know they've been involved in the food program. There's been kind of a cooperation between our career center, but another person I would put out there as a possibility. Just as a couple more thoughts. I mean, there are way more people out there, but every time I think of somebody, I want to throw it out there.
Yep.
So, Guy, what is her last name? You said her name is Sue?
Sue Minter.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've also worked with Liz Scharf before at Capstone on the census stuff earlier this spring.
Yeah.
I think she's the director of economic development there.
Well, the other reason I think of Sue is that I think it's got the career center kind of capture in terms of where they cover, and also I think because they're located in Barrie, and I think they have Barrie at their heart. I mean, I don't think she would say Barrie is the sole source, but she certainly is. And in full disclosure, I think Steve Pappas is their chair of the board. So, I mean, I don't think you'd want both of them, but those are two people I would think that in terms of the region, in terms of the people they work with, in terms of the economic stuff they're involved in, I think would be good people to get involved.
I'm wondering if we're in touch with business groups like the Rotary and other professional organizations that might want to be part of this.
Well,
Um,
the other person I had thought of was the president of the Central Vermont Medical Center, who I believe is from the area to begin with. I think, I'm trying to remember her name, but I believe she has roots in this area. So, certainly in terms of what we're trying to do, in terms of, the breadth of where, who they serve, I think, she would be great to, also another person to consideration,
Right, and if it's not she, it could be someone on the staff who would be interested in not only promulgating the hospital, but also working with schools.
So I'm listening to everything you're saying, but I also would caution you that we only get 12 members. And maybe we could also consider some of these suggestions for to participate in our, what is it called? The feedback groups, because those are specifically geared around, there's one that's teacher staff, there's one that's parent, there's one that's student, there's one that's business leader, there's one that is administrator, and then there's one that's nonprofit community leader. So I think, and then I think those groups, those feedback forums happen, there's 8, it's about 8 people in those feedback groups, and those they meet I'm trying to see how many times they meet. They only might meet twice. Whereas the design team was more parent, teacher, administrators, one business leader, one community member. It was more school-based, I think. And then the feedback comes from those forums but I think these are good names to put into those kinds of groups, because we're going to have to come up with 8 people for each one of those feedback groups. So,
yeah. And I agree with you, Sonia. I'm not trying to put anybody in any particular box. Every time I think of somebody that I think would be potentially helpful to us, I just want to throw them in the mix, as we make the stone soup. And then, maybe Winton can help us, put people in the box. And there are many, many more people out there, but, certainly, you're much more connected in the community than I am. And, but as I think of names, I think it's important that we take a look at them.
And also, that's important to put out in our introductory information so that people will see that it isn't a huge time drain on them if they are on either the design team or if they're on any one of these feedback groups, that it's not going to be a lifelong commitment. That whatever group best fits their contribution to this strategic planning.
I was thinking about Sonia's point that there's 12 members on the design team, and Winton was really clear that you want to keep it small like that. I remember from the meeting I had suggested maybe 13 if we could have representation from both the town and city schools. But with the groups that we're thinking about now, maybe they could help us in communication about the process as we go along, because we have our communication channels and people who usually tune into us are interested in the school, but we're not on the radar of other groups, and they could use their communication channels to let other constituents know what we're doing, just so that they're aware.
And you did agree to bump it to 13 at the board meeting. So we had a parent, one from the city, one from the town. That's in the minutes.
Yeah, I remember that, and honestly, I am, I guess what's going to happen is you're going to have two from one. You could potentially, because we have an elementary parent and a high school parent, and then if you add one more elementary parent or middle school parent, you're going to end up having 2 in 1, really, because the high school is probably going to be from Berry City or Berry Town. And so you're going to end up having, so I'm not sure we necessarily need 2 elementary parents or an elementary and a middle school parent. And I think if we can try to make it as balanced as we can as far as representation from Berry City and Berry Town, so it's not leaning more one way or another. You know, if we have a high school, if we have a, let's say there's, you know, a high school parent and they are from Berry City, then maybe we'd want to make sure that, you know, we're not choosing an elementary parent from Berry City, that we just have some balance that represents lots of different, or both of the communities equally. It will be definitely more difficult with 13 board members because that's an odd number. But with that being said, I'm sure we could do it, but I don't think it's going to be, I think Berry City and Berry Town have a different feel, and I want them both to be equally represented is all I'm trying to get at. So.
I agree with you there, Sonia. That's my main concern, is that there's balance between town and city, so that what we take away from this, everyone sees, you know, their face in it, so to speak.
So do we have a goal for what we want to accomplish tonight as far as, you know, what do we want to do to get information out about this process? That's what we're taking our time to do. So do we have a goal for what we want to do?
Yes, and I think if we look at calendar and we put it on a calendar, so for this month and bring that goal down even, you know, what is our objective for September, that we blanket the area with information about what the strategic planning process is and why the school district is getting involved in it. So we could use our communication methods as well as Front Porch Forum, the Condargus, the World, all of those places, so that it's out there, even like a press release almost to those other civic organizations, so they might put it in their newsletters if they need to, or the like Berry Town has a community newsletter that they put out, so that everybody can get on board with what it is that the school is moving into. And I think that's where we need to start. So if you want me to work with Josh on how to organize that, I would be willing to do that.
Is it going to be just a short, like, hey, we're starting this process, and then, you know, stay tuned for more information kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be incremental. That the first thing is, hello, we're starting this process, and the next week, for example, could be a broader explanation, and then finally just so that and if there are any questions that come back in that first couple of week process, that we can answer those questions about the strategic planning process. But I think the person who would be the most productive to work with, even at this point, would be Winton, because he can guide us through what it is that we need to do to get that information out there.
So here's my question. I think it's great. If you want to work with Josh, I love that idea. Will you guys send us what you're going to share? And then,
yes.
you know, if you need help with where or how to share it, you know, like I can share it to Front Porch Forum for Berry City. But you know, if you need any help with how to like distribute the information, let me
Yeah,
know.
my thought would be to funnel everything through Josh's office, because he being the communications person for the district, everything would go to him.
Yeah, and then I would just send it to you guys for last minute feedback or whatever, and then we can go out with it.
Well, I think everything should go through Josh, but my preference would be that school board members are posting it to things like Front Porch Forum, because I think this is our, you know, this is our project and our initiative. And as much as Josh is maybe helping us write it, it's ours to own, just like the budget. And I feel like we're the ones that need to post it. So if someone has a question, they're going to be asking us, not Josh. Does that make sense?
It's either that or like I can still use the school platforms to get it out, but maybe it's just like message from the board or something like that. Like that's how we do it as.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I like that.
along with your contact information.
Perfect. Okay.
So just so I'm clear, we promised that we would have the design team ready for January. Is that what we said?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we, you know, continue to brainstorm that. You know, at some point, you know, who reaches out to whom? I mean, you know, we're starting to list a number of people. You know, who's going to be the point person in terms of saying, hey, look, you know, do you want to be on the design team? This is what the responsibilities are. Your name came up. You know, we want to talk to, you know, blah, blah, blah. Because that may very well take, you know, from here until January.
So I think we could start doing that, but I also think if our communications are successful, there may be people who self-select, who say,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
want to participate, like Michael Pope. And those are the people we really want on board, because they're willing, you know, they're going to raise their hand and say, I want to do this, and more so than, hey, can I twist your arm to participate?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we definitely should be, you know, maybe thinking about reaching out, but let's start our communication and see if we can get any interest, you know, and maybe that's part of the communication. We're starting to build a design team. If you're interested in this, please contact us, you know, because if someone's like, oh, that's just, you know, up my alley, then we should make sure we get them on board. So
I think that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for folks who already have been involved with whatever it might have been, the Action 6 committee, the PTAs, whatever it might have been, but we're also looking to entice or capture, or whatever, how we want to put it, those folks that maybe have a lot to offer, but have either never been asked or never thought to volunteer for something like this. So we'll, I guess what where that leaves us is, I'll get in touch with Winton, and then Winton and I can get in touch with Josh. Does that seem reasonable? Somebody shake a head. Okay. I don't know if can Josh hear us? Can you hear us, Josh?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Okay, good. You were frozen there for a minute.
Oh.
All right. So anyhow, so we'll do that, and we'll start moving this information process forward. Do you have any other questions or concerns about mission, vision, strategic plan right at this point? All right, hearing none, we'll move forward to communications department.
Yeah.
Josh, that's yours.
Yeah, I don't have any like news regarding this. I mean, I'm definitely still would like to move forward with what I proposed last meeting. I don't know if it was discussed at all when you went over like what was said at the communications meeting at the board meeting when you guys go over. I mean, regardless, I definitely think the need is still definitely there, and it's going to continue to be there through the year for some extra help for myself. especially with school about to start. Who knows what the mystery of COVID will bring on us. And then we're going to be going right into budget season. And when budget season's getting heavy, we're going to be starting this design team thing. So it would just be really helpful to have just like a couple of people just doing those routine tasks for me, which I already have at the website level, but I would just like to extend those guys' responsibilities. That's all, or expand on them.
So Josh, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because I apologize, I wasn't at the last meeting and I did read the minutes, but are you, I know, I mean, in a perfect world, we'd hire additional staff and you'd have a real live department.
Yeah. I honestly don't even think I need that extent. So what I currently have, and it's been this way ever since I started when I was on the technology team back in 2014. There was always 3 of us that managed the websites, and we just got stipended for it. And I've always done Spalding's with Brenda since 2014 when I started. But there's 2 other guys who've been there since 2015, I think. And that's Mike Emmons and Dan Smith. They're already stipended, or they already get a stipend. And Mike Emmons does the Barry Town website, and Dan Smith does the Barry City website. And they've done it for years. So basically, all that I'm looking for is the ability to expand those guys' responsibility beyond just the websites into social media, and also into helping the principals with their monthly newsletters and managing all that and getting them, on a similar platform and looking the same. Because right now they're all over the place. Like Brenda does her own thing on Canva, but then if you look at like Chris and Hayden's, it's completely different. And so I think getting that a little more uniform would be something beneficial. And those are just the types of things that are going to be regularly recurring monthly things that are going on. And with them being able to tackle those little things like that, it would allow me to tackle some of the bigger projects. And some of the ones that I was talking about, like last meeting, was writing policy on social media and policy just for things with our name being used that we don't actually own. Like I know there's a couple situations with Spalding where that's been an issue over the last few years. And so just writing some like real policy alongside that, like really defining what's a school owned account, what's just a school related account, and then what's a personal account. That's just one of those things that I feel like is necessary and could cover us going forward. But I just don't have the time to dedicate to it right now. And then another bigger initiative that I would like to get to, also Spalding related, and I guess it kind of goes with the promotion of SHS, I guess, was getting like merchandise and stuff in stores on Main Street, and just kind of like what Main Street looked like in June. It was just Spalding everything, and that was like really awesome. And I would just love to see that school pride just always be there in the town. I mean, you see people occasionally like wearing Spalding sweatshirts and stuff, but I feel like we could do or we could put a lot of effort towards that. And once, we start getting some of that stuff out there, it's kind of free advertising, not even on Main Street, but then if someone's wearing Spalding merchandise, it's around town, and it's just positive, it's just positive for the school. So those were just like a couple of the larger initiatives that I want to do. And it's really hard to dedicate like 100% energy to it when I'm always being pulled with these little tasks all day. That's all.
Okay, I think what we might do is, Dave, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Could we defer to you for a minute to talk about the allocation of staff time and approaching the policy writing issue?
Yes, definitely. I was going to jump right in. Josh, with the additional help, are you thinking of something that would happen this year, or are you thinking of building this into the budget for next year?
I would love to do it this year. I mean, the stipends that are already out there are fairly minimal. I think mine was like $2,000 a year. I think that is right. So All I would be looking at just to increase that a little bit for those guys because they would be taking on extra responsibility. So it wouldn't be a huge cost to the district, but it would allow me to just, actually address some of those bigger issues. That's all. So ideally, I would love it this year just because this year is crazy. But if it has to be next year, then we'll get through it.
Well, that's something that I can talk with Lisa and Carol to see one, with the stipend structure, what would be a fair amount.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you could send me something that would say how much time you're really looking for, because there's different stipends for different things. And then I could talk with Lisa to see if it's in our budget. And also, too, I think something to think about is the extent that your time has been drawn away to deal with COVID communication to a great extent.
Yeah.
And keeping you away from other things. So, we could talk about, is there a way to charge anything to COVID expenses and use the other monies for the things you were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
For the policy, let's you and I get together on this too. And the first place we should look is the VSBA model policies. And there may be people who are already working on these policies. But we should also connect with the policy committee and get this into their stream of work to see which policies they're addressing first. If you're talking like policy with the capital P.
Yeah, I mean, eventually I think it should be at that point because we've run into issues in the past with that sort of thing, whether it's, staff member misuse of social media or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's important going forward. But if the VSBA is already working on stuff and other schools have adopted it or maybe just adjusted it slightly, we should probably start there.
There is, I know, in the Essex Westford School District, a policy on code of conduct. And it's quite extensive. I'm not necessarily recommending that we go down that path, but it talks about one of the areas that it talks about for employees is when you're representing yourself and when you're representing the school and expectations around that. So it sort of touches on what you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay. I think this. Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that I like the idea, and I really think that David should look into whether any portion of Josh's salary can be charged back to COVID expenses, because if Lisa's having, or superintendent, if you guys are having part of your salaries being charged back, I don't know why Josh wouldn't be able to. That would be able to apply, and then we could use some of that money. And as far as merchandise on Main Street, I absolutely love this idea. And can I put in a request? Because I actually had thought, and I think I told Guy and Paul this one time when we were going to a conference together. I would love to see all of those little tiny fundraisers that every single sports team has to do for warm-ups, like just go away and disappear, because there's like 5 million competing bottle drives and selling cards and, coupon cards and you name it, they're doing it. And if you could have the kids in different schools be helping to sort of fund their athletic or after school or extracurricular activities, that would be a great way for them to help sell that merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't even have to be, you could do an online store and they, grandparents can buy it and they live out of state, and, it helps to support their kids and their programs. So that's my little plug for that.
Yep.
And it's my observation that when we get into the policy practice arena, is that this is slightly different from the code of conduct in that it does address how the name of the school and school district is used for all those little things and who's running those little things. Where code of conduct addresses whether you access the naughty sites on the internet or something like that. This addresses things that benefit the school and how we can all keep track of who's doing what. So that I think that's important to have a handle on that, because in a very public way, it shows the organization of the school district, so that it isn't. So anyhow, that's just my thought on that. That's a good idea.
Having a tough time hearing you, Alice. And like I can barely hear you.
I'm still here. I don't know what has happened. I'm asleep for a second.
It's weird. I can hear her, but just faintly.
Hold on a second. What's happening? But anyway, in my faintness here, we'll move forward to our next issue. I guess that covers the communications department piece. So have we covered that? Shake your heads. All right. How are we doing?
So Alice, this is Guy.
Yes.
This discussion has drawn me to bring up another name that might be important to consider in terms of our future planning, and that's Mike Gilbert. Mike Gilbert has established a huge, I think 1965 website for alumni, but he's extremely active. He bleeds red. He might even pee red. Excuse my French, but those are the kinds of people that, if you're talking about branding and stuff, they would love to bite off this apple. And people like that need to be involved. He has a very, very wide, very wide following. So, just another suggestion.
He has wanted to step back a little bit, though. So, but it doesn't mean we can't use his networking. And just to point out, it's Crimson.
Not red.
Shark on.
All right. So we're up to budget promotion. How do you want to promote this budget?
So obviously we're still in the very early stages. I've talked with Lisa a little bit about it this week, just kind of what my plan is. And Guy brought up a really good point last meeting with the new rise in absentee voting. I'm definitely going to have to change my plan from last year. I still definitely want to do an annual report with a mailing, because I still think that's the best way to reach everybody. But we're going to have to do a different timeline on that, just because people are going to be voting early. So my plan is basically, once school starts and things start happening, to start working on all the non-budget pages, like all the pages that highlight different programs and students and alumni and stuff, and try to get as much of that done ahead of time. And then as it gets closer and closer to the budget season, develop the budget pages, and then hopefully by that point, we'll know kind of what the budget's going to look like roughly as far as an increase goes. And then I can kind of choose which things I want to emphasize about it. And then once we kind of got that, that path that we're going to go down, my plan is basically right when the budget gets warned to just plug in those final numbers and send it right to the printers, because we're going to want to get it out as soon as possible. And with this new change too, in the rise in absentee voting, it might even be beneficial to the board to try to warn the budget earlier this year, just so we can get that done with and we can start really communicating about it before people cast their votes. So that'll be different, but that's the route I want to at least try to go at this point. And then also I want to do, rather than just a budget video like we did last year, do a budget video series leading up. And and I was going to lead it up until, you know, March 2nd or whenever the vote is in 2021. But we're going to have to do it earlier this year. So everything I'm going to try to just make like a month or two earlier.
So Josh, in theory, yes, if we could approve a budget earlier, I think that would always be great. Sometimes I think we're waiting for numbers, and we're waiting, well, last year it was a matter of, you know, we want more information, we want more information, we want more information. And so we kind of just kept prolonging it. But maybe I will ask the finance committee, and I'll talk to Lisa about what's the timeline, and we'll try to set a drop dead date that's actually earlier than the drop dead date, so that we can have a little bit of cushion in there for you to be able to finalize something before the ballot has to go to the printer, kind of thing, so that you have a little bit more wiggle room. So I'll make sure that gets on the agenda, just so we know what that timeline looks like, and we're not like scrambling around. I'll make myself I know.
That would be super beneficial, like not only for me but for you guys, just to have that date set as a goal. Yeah, for sure. So as far as budget promotion goes, like that's kind of where I'm at now. It's hard to give or to have like a real answer until we know what it's going to look like. So as the months go on, we'll definitely have a better idea of what things we want to emphasize and whatnot. I know one of the things I definitely want to include is an update on how the C project's going, wherever it is at that given time, and also how it's going to save us money in the long run. So
basically, what we're checking on is to make sure that earlier is better. And get all the information to you as soon as we can, so that you can get it out to the public.
I was going to ask about the budget timeline and the ballot. Wouldn't it be that the ballot for town meeting can't be printed until the school has put in its numbers, because it will have to say, shall the voters approve X amount? So really, they're sort of waiting on us. And by statute, it has to be so many days before town meeting. So that's our deadline. So, I mean, if we're earlier, they can print the ballot earlier. I'm just thinking we sort of control that ballot timeline by when we make our decision.
And I agree, David. My reason for mentioning it is that I think people are going to have gotten into a early voting mode, and so there's going to be an early voting mode. I'm just saying, in terms of timing, in terms of putting something together, we just need to be mindful of what people have become accustomed to, like in the primary, like in the November election. And I think the same is true for, you know, the school elections. Whenever that drop dead date is, when people can order their, you know, ballots, we should be prepared, probably even before that, you know, to do it. Because if there's any delay, then we miss out on those people that are going to take advantage of the early voting. That's all I'm saying. I agree with you. There's statutory stuff that's going to control that. I just think we need to follow the brain of what people are doing right now, which is, I think they're going, well, wait a minute, we don't know what's going to happen in March. We're probably going to vote early, and we're going to order our ballots, and we're just to be mindful of that. Doesn't mean we change our target levels. It just means we need to be mindful of it.
And also, too, you know, thinking about it, whether, you know, the budget amount is this $1 million or that $1 million, almost isn't the point as much as when you vote, this is what you're voting for. So remember the school, remember what we're doing, remember the students, this is what you're voting for, even more than the did it increase by a certain percent.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And we We did that a lot, I feel like, with last year's annual report, because like the budget stuff, we really only dedicated to those like the last 2 pages, I think. Other than that, it was really just painting that picture of Berry schools.
So Alice, we still are really can't hear you. And I wonder if you, I wonder if you leave and come back in, if it would change it.
Let me try that and see what happens. Hold on. So,
We can pause. We'll discuss amongst ourselves while when you go out and come back in.
talk among yourselves.
Sonia, after the last meeting, you've become an expert at troubleshooting audio.
Oh my gosh, I could not. I just logged into this one and it said because of the size of this meeting, your microphone is muted. I was like, there's 7 people here. How is this a large meeting? This is ridiculous. But I finally figured it out. My sound had, for whatever reason, had muted my microphone. I don't know if it happened on some kind of update. I don't know. I didn't ever go in and change anything. It was just like out of the blue. I had done it one day and it was fine. And then the next time I did log in, it was muted. It was the craziest thing.
How's that?
Better. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. For some reason, I don't know, must be the full moon or something. All righty. So have we talked about budget enough? Are we clear on what our strategy is for budget? You can shake your heads. Yes. Okay. So we'll move on to promotion of Spalding to out-of-district students. Brenda, do you have any comments on that?
Always a work in progress. So we continue to work on doing what I call the dog and pony show and making it more engaging and trying to really separate ourselves from all the other potential schools. Before this meeting started, actually, Andrea made a point is a lot of people already have a bit of a fixed mindset, so it's going to take us some time to change. You know, we haven't provided transportation ever before, so that's a relatively new thing that we're doing. And so people are still convinced we're not doing transportation, even though now we are. And so it takes some time. We have 15 students currently from those schools. And so 2 years ago, when we started this conversation about whether or not to pull transportation into it, you know, we said 6 was the pivotal point at that point in time to send a bus. If we had more than 6 students, it was financially worth us doing. And at that point in time, I think we had 3 students. We might have had 4, but it was under the 6. So we thought it was a reasonable target. So the fact that in 2 years we're up to 15, it's not where obviously we want, but we keep striving. Last year's class at one school was an incredibly small class, and so they actually had a real dip in there, so it was less students for us to even try to pull from. But it is something we continue to do in trying to brand ourselves, like Josh was saying. And Josh, even before he was in this current role, had worked with me to help with documentation and handouts and the web page. And honestly, our web page has probably gotten us the biggest footprint, I would say, out in the bigger community. And I get a lot of feedback from people outside of the community that are looking at real estate, and they reach out to me saying, I was looking at your website, I'm looking at the area, I have questions about your program of studies. And so we really do highlight those features pretty well. But there's always more to do. And one of the things Josh and I have talked about quite a bit is we had to fix our webpage because it was not ideal before, and we've made a lot of progress, but it's still a passive form of information. You
Mhm.
have to go looking for it. And so the stuff that, you know, when Josh was talking about having stores have some of our swag in it, that helps make us more prominent in the community for people to either one go looking for it or for it just to be more like on their minds. And one of the other campaigns that I started about 3 years ago, I started looking at local real estate agents because people looking for real estate, one of the major factors is they're looking at the school system, if they have families, and obviously we know we have an aging population, and we're hoping to pull families into our community. So as people, you know, pass away, their houses become available because they move into care facilities and so forth. We want to try to pull younger families into the community. We want to have our school profile be of a higher quality, I would say. And one of the things that I have looked at with Josh's predecessor is the feedback. If you look at real estate feedback, how they calculate that, you know, our score isn't very high for a school system. And so I've been looking in on how is that score realized, and how can we work with real estate agents to give them a better understanding about what schools, what our school system offers, because to me it feels like a benefit to them as a selling feature if they're trying to sell property in Barre, that they can speak in an informed manner about what we have to offer. And I had reached out originally to a couple of different real estate agents, and then, you know, life gets busy and other priorities come along. But it is something that I feel that's an area where we could really grow. And it's not just our Chelsea, Thompson, you know, community that we can continue to work with, but the greater Barre community and trying to build our numbers.
So when it comes to the actual marketing of the school to our neighboring schools that have choice, I think what we need to think about is how to get more ponies and less dogs into the show. And so what would it take? Are we talking videos? Are we talking students at the school fairs? What does that look like, do you think?
So typically, I've done a few of them. It depends on what evening. I've had typically conflicts on the nights that they're night events. I always try to send my director of guidance. So Rye Hoffman is my current director of guidance. In the past, it was Dave Nicholson. I've also been sending Jim Ferlin, one of my assistant principals. So we try to have an administrator and the director. I've also typically have tried to have ROTC, my JROTC program, represented there, because that is a major factor what makes us different from the other schools. And that's also something very visible and visual. And we usually have some student representation there. We have videos, we have handouts. One of the things the first time that I did it was not on my radar, but apparently chocolate chip cookies is an expectation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think David has actually been in some of those before himself, or his community representative. So it's interesting. We try to make our storyboard, you know, our presentation different every single time. So if there's siblings, and it's communication, it's really a lot of communication beforehand with the guidance counselors of those schools. And, you know, again, before this meeting opened up, Andrea was talking about just getting the information out earlier, because what we also found was by the time we got to, you know, the dog and pony show night, a lot of students and families had pretty much already made their decisions. So, we kind of targeted like the 7th graders rather than the 8th graders, because many of the 7th graders. So it's a matter of, you know, and also the staff, the counselors and the principals of those schools who were present, trying to help them be aware of what we're doing. But it's constant. And what I find is it's about the information, but it's also trying to change the perception, because it doesn't matter how many times I say we offer transportation. In their heads, they're like, yeah, but I don't think you do. You know, so it's going to
Yeah.
take a little bit of time to get there. So now, is it all perfect? Well, we can always improve. We can always try to do more. One of the things that we did notice when all of the other groups were there, they had swag stuff to hand out, and we definitely did not have stuff really. And so that was something. Not that I think that makes somebody decide to go to your school. I think it makes people stop at your table and grab your swag.
That's right.
But the stuff that, you know, Ryan and I talked about was having something of quality, not something you just stopped at your table and grabbed and then you threw away on your way out because it's stuff you don't really want. So we have tried to bring stuff, you know, like we've had some extra roll tide t-shirts or coffee mugs that, you know, was that were designed from one of our seniors, you know, and that kind of thing. So.
And what's the timeline for beginning promotions to neighboring schools? Is it December? Is it September?
It's typically, I want to say late October, early November that we're going and doing the visits. And so it's time for the families to have information ahead of time before they make their decisions. When the hard part, and Josh and I were talking about a bigger campaign other than the one night and leaving handouts with the school counselors, but we don't have access to like all their mailing addresses, right? So we can't send out a mailing. And we can send information to the counselors, but just like when we get information from other places, it's kind of like, well, we'll put it on a pile or a bulletin board. So Josh and I were trying to brainstorm how we might further that impact on those schools other than that one night.
Okay.
You know, the experience that I've had with this coming from White River Valley, oh my gosh, White River Valley High School with like 275 high school students, we were desperate to have people come. And we were up against schools like Thetford Academy, who they had the swag, they put out newspaper ads, they were on the radio. On the local radio channels saying, come to Thetford Academy, because you could do that as choice. So I agree with all these things, you know, being early, you know, getting that information out there. I love the idea of targeting 7th graders. That's a really smart idea, right? Because like juniors are thinking about college, seniors have already decided. So, but I'm also thinking along the line, sort of market research, not that I'm an expert in it, but what do the students want and what do the parents want? Do you want sports that you couldn't get at your local high school? Do you want ROTC? Do you want to go to the tech center and have it be in the same building as your high school?
What the information from the families that I have talked to, and Andrea is actually a parent in this cohort, so she's also someone who may want to weigh in here, but AP is a big thing. So our AP offerings is big, but we're not unique in AP offerings. We do try to push for more students to access AP, probably than some other schools, but that's one thing I've heard of very clearly. JROTC, because we are only one of 3 schools in the state that offer it, so that's a big thing. And sports. And many of the kids do pick Spalding because they are in our feeder programs. So like they're in the youth programs with other Berry students, and they already have friends in that cohort. So they're coming to Spalding, although not a Berry City or Berry Town student, they have friends who are Berry City and Berrytown students. And that's probably, I'll say, one of the biggest deciding factors for a lot of the students, because they are coming from a very small school, coming into a much bigger school, and that feels daunting for some of them. So to know that they already have friends is a big thing.
It almost makes me think of you could have, you know, the swag and the information at the high school selection nights, but you also might want to have a presence at certain hockey games or soccer camps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
So-
also
Oh, go ahead, Alice.
I'm also thinking you oftentimes see the center spread in the world with various businesses with the comments about, you know, they support Spalding, that kind of thing. And if that were a possibility to work with the world to get some kind of that center page spread on, so we could really show people what we do and have those things that Brenda just listed as very positive markers for Spalding, so that parents would see that when they're flipping through looking for the Thunder Road results.
I also think, though, that could also be a good way to also communicate part of the stuff that I've been talking about, which is, you know, community service is required, financial literacy is required, civics is required. Like, these are things that parents might say, oh, you're going there because that's important and they are requiring it. And I think that's a great idea. So maybe that's and it also sells it to our own community. Then they hear it and they realize, oh, I didn't know Spalding did that. And so then it helps not just bring people in, but, you know, also educate our community as well.
Since we started talking about this too, I was looking at a couple private schools in New Hampshire, because obviously they're forced into doing outreach to survive. And I noticed one of the things that both those schools had that we did not, at least on our websites, was we don't have like an about us page. We have like a thing that's our history, and there's some stuff from the administrators in there. But these other schools have like, and it's like one of the first links on the website, it's an about us that really has like a welcome message from the principals. It's got enrollment information, what your mission vision is for the school, some quick facts, a lot of stuff about school community and athletics. And it's almost just kind of like a one-stop shop. Like I'm a parent from wherever and I'm looking to move into the area, and I click about us, and it's kind of everything I need to know in one spot. Granted, that's again a passive form of that information because it's on our website, but it's something we don't have at all. All the information about the school is kind of just scattered throughout the website.
I will also say, as a parent of someone who was recruited by a school like that, there's a lot of social media too. There's a lot of like, so once you like their page and like their Instagram, you know, you're following it, they're always putting stuff out there telling you about, you know, what's going on and what great things are happening, or it's just a regular day and look at our happy kids going to class and that sort of thing. So.
And that goes back to Josh having more free time to help us with that social media campaign.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have been better about it. I was actually just looking at, I was only looking at the district Facebook page, but since, because I started last October, so it's been 11 months, and I just looked, and our Facebook following, at least on the district page, has tripled since then. So that's really cool. So we've definitely, I mean, and we've built up Instagram pages. All of them have a following now, where before they didn't. So we're definitely getting better about that, but it definitely, especially like in the spring when it was remote learning and we're like, oh God, like what do we share? Like it was hard to find information. It was more like a weekly thing. I'd say we were sharing stuff, but we started off really strong, like doing it multiple times a week. And I think we could get back to that. It'll be a little challenging, obviously, because of COVID and and students aren't going to be doing big events or anything like that, at least at the moment. So we'll have to be a little creative in the stuff we share.
So Brenda, I'll just speak for myself. Again, I think in terms of the outreach piece, it's always good to hear from somebody who's had a positive experience from the institution you're trying to promote. So obviously, any alumni that might want to be involved. And I have to say that as a school board member, I've never been asked to be present at some of these things. And as a Spalding graduate who bleeds crimson, I would be more than happy to, to help represent the high school. I just think, if people have had a positive experience, like to hear that stuff, I know the Career Center, I think, has done that pretty much in their promotion, and I think they've done a really good job with that. So, just a couple of suggestions, and I would tell Sonia that I would wear my name tag.
I was thinking along the lines of where our market is, and our location is really excellent. And I wonder if we think about high schools, towns that have choice, where the families might be traveling the I-89 corridor to get to work or traveling Route 2, that we might think about picking up kids that are from farther away if this is a good option for them.
Yeah.
So just some input from one of the sending towns. And I also, you weren't all here earlier, but I'm also a Berry City taxpayer and was a Berry Town taxpayer. In our town and in Washington, Orange, Chelsea is kind of new, but in Washington and Orange, it has just kind of become the norm that you send your kids to U32. And that is really going to be difficult to break. We are literally losing millions of dollars to U32. The biggest thing is pushing, number one, transportation. I know of one family alone that told me they didn't realize Spalding had transportation, and they just enrolled their child to start at U32 for the next 4 years. So because we didn't push that we give transportation, there's at least one person that we just lost. I think that it would help to start promoting early. I was saying, our band, having band before school allows our students to have an extra credit every year. We get our 8 academics and then we have band, and we have the best darn band in the state. I think we need to stress the scholarship, all the scholarships that Spalding offers. I think we need to stress that, yes, they continue playing sports with students that, friends they've been playing with. But in addition to that, if they're at Spalding, all of these students are still closer to home. So when kids do stay late after practice, then mom and dad haven't, they're closer to get them home. They're not, or when they go to games, they don't have to race out to East Montpelier. You know what I mean? The proximity of Spalding to Washington, Orange, and Chelsea is much closer. Why have your child travel that much further on the bus every day and for you to have to go see them at games? One thing that U32 does, but I don't know, is I don't know if it would be something that would even be worth considering. They actually drop some students off at the Elks Club. They have a bus drop there for kids who stay at the Aldrich Library until school gets out. That's kind of the opposite way of coming this way. Trying to think that there was quite a few things that I was thinking of, but those are some of the ones for starters. But yeah, and the four block schedule. My kids just love really focusing on 4 subjects rather than having 8. So I think that's another good thing to stress. So that's some of the ideas that I have here. Transportation is a big, big thing. And I think we really have to start early in promoting the school. Like I said, kids who are already, or families that already have kids at U32 probably won't even consider Spalding. But if you can get families that don't have children in school yet, and really push hard, because it is serious revenue, which could even be helped to fund other things that certain people like Guy want for the high school.
All right. Okay, so we've got some ideas here, and we can begin to move forward with them to see how to capture our neighbors and have them take advantage of our a really fine high school. So, any other questions, comments, concerns about recruitment of and promotion?
We have touch football. Sorry.
Okay, but what I want to see, there's a group, and I won't mention their names, but they have this huge blow-up rat that they take to various occasions, and I'd like to see a huge blow-up shark that take to various occasions, and with Spalding written across it. Okay, so the last bit on our new business is the census. And that's really extremely important, because the last information that I have on the census is that Barry Town is at 70% completion, and Barry City is at 58% completion. And from the information that I've been receiving from the United States Census, is that it's going very slowly in our area, trying to catch up with people. And a lot of people don't have a clear understanding of why it is important to fill out that census information. That it's not the government spying on them, it's not somebody that would come looking for them, but it is a benefit to the community. And then Senator Leahy also sent out some information today on why it is important. And his calculations showed that for every person that does not get counted, we lose approximately $4,000. And that's a lot of money to forfeit just by not being counted. So I thought I talked to Josh before about how we might be able to get some information to parents and folks that they have until the 30th of September to either go online or be contacted by an enumerator and fill out that census. And that's extremely important that be done. So that's where I'm coming from.
Is it possible to share the link to the census, as well as it costs us $4,000, and have Josh do the text message push?
Oh, you can, any way you can. The United States Census is not opposed to any sharing of their website, which is 2020census.gov. There may be something in front of that. I don't remember right at the moment, but as many people who can get online there, or if they need someone to assist them with filling it out, that would also get them in contact with an enumerator. So yes, share it widely and constantly.
Yeah, and I'd also say throughout last winter into I think it was February when we stopped meeting, but I was part of the complete count committee in Barrie, and John Pandolfo attended that with me, with other business owners and stuff in Barrie. And we got a ton of census resources by going to those meetings, including posters and stuff that were geared towards schools. And I think it was the first week of March or something like that. I got them in the school lobbies and the libraries, and then the next thing I know, we were shut down. So, but they also did provide too. They had not necessarily a curriculum, but different activities for every single grade level that a teacher could just use for just even just a 1 hour lesson or something like that. And it was all the way down to kindergarten, and basically just why it's important. and how it affects our community and everything like that. And so I still have all of that stuff. And then obviously COVID took over, but now I think it's definitely a good time to pick that back up, that conversation. Whether we get information in the schools or have the kids hear about it at school, and then, or the kids receive, I don't know, a paper or something, and then they bring it home and their parent looks at it and they're like, oh crap, we haven't filled this out, or anything like that. So, but we can definitely, as a school, make an effort to start discussing it again.
Can we send an email to everybody, parents, staff, everybody, and have that information about where Berry City and Berry Town are at for completion? The $4,000 per person. If it's $4,000 per person and we're only at 58% completion, that means we are going to lose out on X amount of dollars. And then just provide the link, because I think for a lot of people, if it's as simple as, oh, I just clicked this link. I mean, I did it online and it was literally 5 minutes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was so easy. And if they, I guess if they're worried about it doesn't take a long time at all, but some people probably struggle a little bit more with technology than other people. And so, ask your kid to help you, because they probably could figure it out. It's very, very, very simple. I did it on my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally did it on my phone. So I think sending something where it's just a click, that would be the easiest way, because I think it's going to get, there'd be a higher percentage of it getting done than a piece of paper.
Yeah, and that's totally doable. I can definitely work on something like that.
Yeah, I agree, Sonia. And you click the link on your phone and there it is in your hand. So keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really think the piece about the revenue lost is a really critical one, so that it because I think some people just don't think it makes much difference if they do it or don't do it. Like, they don't feel that impact. And if they know it's going to impact our community to this extent, and the offset is higher taxes because we don't have this.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of misunderstanding, that people don't recognize that their input results in something positive for the city and for the town and therefore the school, because they're not seeing any revenue in their hand. They're not getting a check, but what they are getting is help with their taxes, benefits to the school, the roads repaired in both city and town. That's the benefit they're getting from them taking that 5 minutes to fill out the census.
Yeah, so I'll make an effort then I'll go way back in my email and find all those resources that I was given, and I'm sure we can reuse a lot of them. But yeah, we can for sure get a communication out about this.
Very good. That I'm sure everyone, both at the town and city, and of course at the school, will appreciate that. Okay, so old business, reopening communication update.
Yeah.
Rather than reopening communications.
So yeah, since we last met, we've put out a lot of information. I've been working with administrators on developing frequently asked questions for their schools, a day in a life pages for their schools, so kids can and families can get an idea of what their day is going to look like from morning until they're dismissed. And then obviously we talked about earlier, we did the back to school videos, which those I've gotten good feedback on so far. I don't know what you guys have heard, but as the school year starts next week, I definitely feel like communications are going to need to be frequent and timely. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. We're going to be figuring things out on the fly, and I don't know, I anticipate there being a lot of communication over the next month. So we'll do our best to stay on top of that. And then I also, once school starts, want to make an effort to be in the buildings and capturing some of what's going on, just because there is so much unknown. That was part of the reason for doing the videos in the first place, was to give people that visual, because I feel like there was a lot of anxiety just because people had no idea what to expect, and at least now they've seen it. And so tomorrow actually is freshman orientation at Spalding, so I'm going to stop down there in the morning and just get some photos of what's going on, get some photos of kids wearing their masks correctly and socially distanced, and get that out before the weekend, because I think again, that's another thing that would just help lessen anxiety a little bit, just because people are seeing kids back in the building, hopefully being safe, and it's just a good picture to paint. But as far as reopening communication, I just didn't know if as the board, if you guys had any ideas for us or feedback or anything like that, just because I was not at the full board meeting, so I don't know if anything was discussed.
Just a quick question, Josh. I know that the Times-Argus has published things like bus schedules and school opening things, and I'm wondering if there's a way we can use them to also for opening day exercises type thing. I don't know what they're planning, so I get just a thought. I mean, it's not a huge audience, but it is an audience.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we can couch something in a way where it'll catch people's attention, but just another way to highlight us, Yeah.
Well, it's a good point about the bus schedule too that you're talking about, because me personally, I haven't even received them yet, so so we haven't shared them ourselves.
Well, if they are going to be different, if they are going to be different areas and stuff, it's probably good to find that out. I mean, I think probably parents are going to be asking that question, would be my guess.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah, my finger is on the trigger to get those bus routes out and the meal delivery stuff, because I know parents want to know, and so yeah.
Well, and I'm also wondering. Lots of times we've reached out to Dave and Jeb at Times-Argus when we have events, and I'm wondering if at dismissal time, so they can maybe talk to students and say, "So how was it?" and get some positive commentary from students.
That's a good idea. So did we lose Josh?
My camera stopped at least. Sorry, I'm trying to fix it.
Okay.
There, you're back.
Hello.
It just randomly stopped. And then one other thing I was going to add too about the Times-Argus, I did get the full page ads secured like we did last year. So the first one for us will be October 23rd, which is a Friday. They're all Fridays, I believe. We got October, January, March, and May, I think, are the months. So basically, as soon as school starts, I'll start brainstorming what we want to do for that first issue.
Okay. Very good. Are we clear on communicating about the reopening? Any other questions, concerns? Okay, let's move on to other business. Any other business to come before this board?
Alice, just a quick question as a preventative measure. I don't know if we have the numbers of homeschoolers that are going to be in our area. But from what I understand, I think the numbers have gone up considerably. Now, statewide, I hear a fairly large increase in percentage. Just in terms of any negative publicity financially or whatever, are we prepared to report those or know what those numbers are? Do we have any idea? They probably have extended the homeschooling application date. I don't know, but just as kind of a preventative measure, because I think it's going to come up at some point. I know it's come up in a couple of talk shows, about people talking about, how are we getting funded, blah, 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 blah. you know.
So yes, those numbers have come out. The state has given us our first report. I don't have them with me, but I'm asking Tina to compare it to last year to see what our increase is. And I think another thing for people to follow is that the VSBA and the VSA are going to lobby the legislature to hold school districts harmless for the dips in the ADM during this time. So we don't have control over that, but those organizations are trying to make that happen.
Right.
I can speak to the Spalding numbers. We have 9 right now on the list, and only one of that's not from. So 8 of them were from last year, are also doing it this year. So there's 1 new student.
Okay.
But I hate to say, I think the numbers at the K-8s are higher, because Tina's first glance at it, that it was higher. It's good to know that the high school's not that way.
Yeah. But that potentially is just for this year. Those students could possibly return in another year or so.
I think so, and I think it's, you know, people making big compromises in their lives to homeschool their children when maybe they would have taken on work or done other things.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll keep an eye on that and see where that's going. All right. So items for future agendas. Anything that we need to? Well, of course, we'll continue talking about mission, vision, strategic plan, budget promotion will probably remain on. We could check back with promotion of Spalding, how that's going, and if there's, I think basically those 5 things that we have under new business can still remain on, so we can just do check-ins on some and talk some more about others. Any other new things that we think we need to add to our agenda?
Not at this point I can think of anything. It wouldn't surprise me if something comes up as school starts.
Yeah, that probably would be the biggest thing, something that we would have to talk about. Okay. Hold on, I just have to shut the door because the dog is about to bark.
Actually, I have one more thing, because to feed off Brenda's piece, which is, you know, the more positive stories we can feed into in terms of this experience. And I say that because I ran into somebody the other day that I had a perception that was extremely negative about, you know, how our school district was dealing with kids. And it took me about 2 hours to get myself off the floor. I know that's a bad visual, but she said, "I really like what your district has done." And I think there are those stories out there that we're not, captivating. And if we can captivate a few of those, which really kind of pumps people up a little bit, it's like the whole thing about, yeah, this stinks, but you know what? You guys are doing a great job, and my kid's having a good experience, and, blah, blah, blah. So anything we can do to pick that up would be great. And it only takes 1 or 2 of those sometimes to, like, all of a sudden the community just take off. As we all know, it only takes 1 or 2 negative experiences for the community to take off, So any of those that we see, man, I would pick up on it, and there are some.
On that note, I was talking with the Stowe superintendent, and her strategy when people come and they're concerned and they might say, "Gosh darn it, the school made my life hard." She tries to deflect that and turn it around and say, "Hasn't COVID-19 made our lives hard?" So we're doing the best by your kids, and point the blame at COVID-19, because it's really where it belongs. We would we would have a regular school year if we could.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll keep those positive stories going and coming in. So with those items that we have for our future agenda, we'll look at our next meeting as being the 1st of October at 5:30, and I will presume that we'll still be Zooming or Googling or whatever method we'll be using, but I suspect we'll still be online rather than in person. Looking forward to the day that we can be in person again. That we really do exist from more than the shoulders up. No. So we'll carry on from there.
If the shark is my mascot, I'd rather be Zooming than be in person. How's that?
And did you notice our shark was masked?
Yes, I noticed that. Yeah.
Very good. Yes.
Uh,
And I guess we can, by consensus, adjourn for the evening and carry on.
all right, guys. Thanks for your efforts. Have a good
All
night.
right. Is there anyone who doesn't want to adjourn?
No, Josh, did you see my note here?
Yes, I'll send that to you,
Thank
Andrea.
you. Have a
All
great
right.
night.
Have a good night,
Thank
everyone.
you all.
Take care.
Bye.
Signing off here. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.